So today we are going to unpack a single, pretty startling statement that's come out of Uganda from its top military chief. And believe me, it has the potential to kind of rewrite the rules of engagement in the Middle East. It's this wild proposal that connects an East African powerhouse directly to the long-simmering conflict between Israel and Iran. So let's get into it and break down what this really means and, why it really matters.
Right off the bat, you're probably thinking the same thing I was. An African power in a Middle East war? How does a major nation like Uganda even get looped into one of the world's most volatile conflicts? It's a question that really challenges all our traditional ideas about global alliances and who's involved where.
Okay, so to really get what's going on, we have to look at the exact words that kicked this whole conversation off. It all boils down to one very surprising suggestion. And there it is. That's the statement that started everything. It is incredibly short, but man, it is packed with geopolitical weight. It hints at a military alliance, it names the players, and most importantly, it teases this powerful, kind of personal motive. Let's dig into each piece. So first, you've got Uganda. And look, we're not talking about a small player here. Uganda has one of the most capable and, frankly, battle-hardened militaries in all of East Africa. So for its top military chief to even float an idea like this, that's a huge signal on the world stage. Then, of course, there's the conflict at the heart of it all, the high-stakes shadow war between Israel and Iran. It's a rivalry that is just so deeply entrenched, and up until now, it's mostly been contained to the Middle East and, its immediate surroundings. And that brings us to the core of the whole thing, the idea of Uganda actually joining forces with Israel. We're not just talking about, say, diplomatic support here. The suggestion is for active military participation in a war. I mean, that would be a completely unprecedented move for any African nation in this kind of situation. But of all the powerful words in that one little statement, there's one in particular that just stands out. It's the word that points to the motivation, the why behind such an incredible idea. Why would Uganda even consider a move like this? What could possibly push them to enter such a dangerous and, frankly, distant conflict? Well, the source gives us a one-word answer, but it's an answer that kind of comes with its own mystery. Payback. Now, what's so crucial here isn't just the word, but the punctuation that came with it in the original source. That question mark, it suggests this might be more of an idea being floated than, a firm policy. But it still frames the entire potential action as an act of retribution, of settling some kind of old score. So here's the bottom line. This single statement signals a massive potential shift in Uganda's foreign policy, and really its entire role in the world. You see, for decades, a lot of African nations have held this posture of neutrality, right? It's a legacy of the non-aligned movement during the Cold War. This proposal, it would be a complete 180-degree turn from that history. It signals a very clear move away from staying neutral and toward a definitive strategic alliance. And this really matters because it could be a sign of a much broader trend. We might be watching regional African powers becoming more assertive, positioning themselves as key players in bigger international security frameworks and using their military strength to forge new alliances way beyond their own borders. So ultimately, this one sentence from Uganda's military chief leaves us with some really critical questions. And by digging into them, we can start to see the future of global security maybe taking a new shape. So the most obvious question is, payback for what? The statement itself is pretty vague, but if you look at the historical context, there are some pretty powerful clues. The security relationship between Uganda and Israel actually goes back decades, most famously to that 1976 Israeli commando raid in Entebbe to free hostages. More recently, you could argue that payback might be aimed at Iranian-backed groups that have caused instability across East Africa. So for Uganda, aligning with Israel could be a strategic play to counter shared threats in the region. So if we zoom out and look at the bigger picture, could this set a new precedent? I mean, if a major African power like Uganda aligns itself so clearly in a Middle Eastern conflict, you have to imagine that could create ripples all across the continent. It might pressure other nations to pick a side, potentially fracturing these long-standing diplomatic traditions of African unity on foreign policy and creating a whole new set of regional tensions. And that brings us to our final thought.
Are we watching a real shift away from the old diplomatic norms, a move toward more direct, interest-driven alliances that are built on shared threats and, yeah, sometimes on settling old scores? It's a really provocative question, and the answer could very well define the next era of global politics.